All right, Representative Howe, welcome to the committee. I'll move House File 118 be re-referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services Reform. We have the bill before us. Representative Howe, to your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. House File 118, what it does is takes the federal income guidelines and resource guidelines and applies it, basically an asset test, to those that receive food stamps, or more commonly now known as SNAP. I will say some folks will characterize this as a way to kick people off of the program. That in no way is the intent of this bill. Those in need should get assistance. What this bill does is it tries to prohibit those with considerable assets from receiving the assistance that they should not receive. So it's actually setting up some guidelines to protect the program from abuse. I will say that, you will hear from folks that oppose this that the guidelines are too low. The limits are too low. I am open to another limit. Provide a limit that is satisfactory to you. I am open to that. The federal guidelines actually limit to one vehicle. We have exempted that. We took that out. So it does not limit the household to one vehicle. So members, some folks will say this doesn't happen. I've got my testifier here who is my constituent, Rob Understander, who will explain to you how this program is being abused.
Thank you, Representative Howe. Welcome to the committee. Mr. Understander, please introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Rob Understander from Way Park, Minnesota. I'm here because I think the state of Minnesota should not give food stamps to millionaires and high net worth individuals. I know you do because my wife and I have received nearly $6,000 of SNAP benefits over a 19-month period ending in January of this year. Why did we do this? To raise public awareness. In a nutshell, we would not be here talking to you today if we hadn't. Sitting here for the last hour listening to all these other individuals and programs in need, to me, this is even more wrong, I guess, appalling. The Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program should be made available only to those in need, not people like my wife and myself. Why are we eligible? Because eligibility in Minnesota is based on income only, not assets. If one has money, one does not need money from the government for food. As most of you know, the food stamp program started in '64 under the LBJ administration, underwent a major overhaul in the 2008 Farm Bill. In addition to changing the name to SNAP, retirement savings and education accounts were eliminated from asset testing eligibility requirements. Many states, 35 to date, took that as a sign and eliminated asset testing altogether. And more on my personal experience, our relatively expensive house with its high mortgage payment, taxes, and insurance qualifies us for a higher benefit because those benefits are based on net income. We received up to $341 per month. I've personally talked to several seniors in the St. Cloud area who are struggling financially and only receive the minimum $15. Asset testing with excess value determination would have prevented this disparity. Also, I would like to see retirement accounts included in tested resources. Our Roth IRAs have enabled us to live very comfortably without counting as income. Growing up at a small dairy farm, I was taught to work, save money for retirement and rainy days, and live off those savings later in life. But because Minnesota does not count those savings, I'm allowed to siphon unneeded welfare benefits. Representative Howe told me that some of you are concerned about the additional cost of asset testing. I spoke to Jan Goligowski, it's a hard name to say, Goligowski, the Stearns County Director responsible for administering SNAP benefits, and she confirmed that, yes, it would indeed take more time to verify every asset on every application. My recommendation is one that allows us to have our cake and eat it too. Just as every tax return is not audited, not every SNAP application would have to undergo asset verification. Applicants, like tax filers, could be subject to severe penalties for falsifying information. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this point if anyone has questions.
Mr. Understander, I just had, well, Representative Pinto, go ahead.
Oh, no, that was for you, Mr. Chair.
Just curious, so you're just here as a private citizen, you're not with an advocacy group on any?
That is correct.
Okay. And so you are somebody who qualifies for this benefit, you don't want it, and you think that it shouldn't be available to people like you because you don't need it, and you see by just the limited time you've been here that there are people who truly do need that help.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Well, thank you for being here today. Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I was just trying to understand your, and I apologize for prying, but I guess it's for asking a personal question, but I guess it relates to the account you've provided. Your gross income then is less than the federal poverty guidelines, the 165% that is the current requirement under the SNAP program for you and your wife.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Again, part of the reason is, of course, when you have savings account, Roth IRAs, as you know, that does not count as income. So we didn't need a lot of income. We're able to basically control our income. My wife took her Social Security benefit, but that is about equal to our house payment. So that's why it works that way, because they look at, and I believe, and that's correct, by the way, that's the right way to do it. They look at your total income and then what your basic expenses are. So does that make sense?
So Mr. Chair, maybe do we have a sense as to what that gross income level is, the 165% of federal poverty guidelines that is the current requirement for SNAP? Do you understand what I'm asking?
I understand what you're asking, Representative Pinto. I think what the testifier is saying is that you can have cash and assets and you don't need income, and many people do if you sell a business or if you have cash. That doesn't show up on a K-1 or W-2 or 1099.
And Mr. Chair, I guess what I was hearing is it sounded like there's some income that the testifier received, and maybe others as well, that is not being counted right now. And so I guess I wonder if maybe for Representative Howe, maybe another way of dealing with this is just to make sure that folks' income is fully being counted. It sounds like the testifier has some income that was not being counted, and so therefore he maybe wouldn't have been eligible for SNAP benefits if his full income was being accounted for. Because it does seem like taking into account the money that's coming in for folks, as we do currently, in general, I think most people would make sense. So I'm just trying to understand that.
Representative Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Pinto, the problem is under the federal SNAP guidelines is that if you defer, if Mr. Understander was required to take his Social Security before drawing SNAP, he wouldn't qualify. His income would be too high. But he was eligible. He deferred his Social Security. He drew on his IRA. IRA doesn't count federally under the SNAP guidelines. Now, I don't know if I can go ahead and count it state, if we can do it just by state guidelines, we can do that. I don't know that. I thought I'd be trampling on federal law, so I didn't go there. But I know we can apply an asset test. So that's the only area that I believe that we can affect that. So I think, and I've been talking to the congressional delegation to change the federal guidelines to actually require if you were eligible for Social Security, that you should draw your Social Security before drawing food stamps. I'm also talking to them about if you have an IRA and you're taking a draw on your IRA, that should count when you're looking at SNAP guidelines. So I'm talking to the congressional delegation to change that federally, because I don't know if I can change, I don't believe that I can change that statewide and enforce something more restrictive than the federal guidelines on the income and how you associate what is income and what is not.
And I guess, Mr. Chair, the point I guess what I'm getting to is there's the expression "bad facts make bad law." We have a testifier who, is by his own admission, he and his wife are fairly well off. He's chosen to he took this path and was receiving SNAP benefits. Sounds like technically that he was entitled to receive. I'm not sure that an individual and his wife who did that in order to sort of make this point is necessarily saying that this is in fact a widespread concern, especially given the responses that I think we're about to hear from all kinds of folks saying that this is going to be burdensome on the not only on the people involved, who are people that in general are in really difficult circumstances, unlike our testifier. I guess I have those concerns. And I guess my last question is just, is there a fiscal note or some sense as to how much it'll cost the state to have this kind of, to add this additional test that then is being evaluated?
Mr. Berg, has there been a fiscal note submitted on this?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pinto, there is not a current request on that. I think there was some concern that there would need to be some modifications. As far as costs, I don't know, the SNAP is a federal program and it's federally funded. So really changes to this program will not affect the state budget.
Okay. And I just want to recognize when we do this sort of thing, Mr. Chair, there certainly is a cost, not only for the individuals involved, who in general, the vast majority of whom are really hungry, that's why we're providing this benefit, but also cost on the rest of us as well. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Considine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You knew this was wrong, and you did it anyway. And frankly, I find this pretty despicable. What? The guy has far more money probably than, well, by his own admission, than is legally allowed to have, but he found a loophole. I'm actually just sorry there's no way we can prosecute you, to be honest. The vast majority of the people here are on this program need it. And you highlighted a loophole on this program. And yes, the people that do this kind of thing should be prosecuted. We should find a way to find out about their assets. But you said you collected some $6,000? Is that correct?
Yes.
So you were on it for a while before you decided to highlight it?
No. Mr. Chair, may I address that?
Please do.
I understand your concern, and to be honest, I anticipated some reaction like that. This is not a loophole. This is law that, as I was trying to explain, and the tide has changed in health and human services in the last 15 years, where there's an effort to help people get back on their feet very, very quickly. And so the thought was that if they didn't want to deter them from having savings accounts. I think the converse might be true. I think if people know that if they make bad financial decisions, they have a safety net. And also, trying to remember, no, I immediately, as soon as I took these benefits for this purpose and started acting on it right away. We tried last year to do something. And I also want to point out, I understand your reaction, Representative
Considine.
Considine. I also want to point out that every penny that we've collected, we've given to charities, my church, and needy individuals. And I feel that my wife and I can do a better job of distributing these benefits than the federal government can.
Mr. Chair?
Representative Considine.
Thank you. I am pleased to hear that you gave the money to the church. That would certainly be better than your keeping them. But again, this is not a typical case for people that are on SNAP, and I don't like seeing it being portrayed as such. Thank you.
Representative Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Considine, the county actually went out and did an audit, fully compliant. That's the problem. I think it's our responsibility, it's the legislature's responsibility to put those guidelines in place to make sure those in their need are getting it, and those that aren't, don't. And I think that's our responsibility, to put those guidelines in place to ensure that those that don't need it and have considerable assets cannot get the benefit.
Mr.
Representative
Chair,
Albright.
may I respond to that?
Representative Considine, if you wish.
Thank you. I agree with
You have
Mr. Howe on
limited
that.
time, and I know you didn't, and I know Representative Considine, you didn't mean to intimate that the testifier was in some way breaking the law, which I think somebody could construe your comments to mean, and I think it should go on the record that you did not intend to say that. Is that correct, Representative Considine?
Well, Mr. Chair, I think if somebody takes benefits that they're not entitled to, they should be prosecuted.
Representative
Now, I
Considine,
think
I don't
if
think what you're
Mr.
saying
Howe
is
said
the case.
that indicated that the audit indicated that he did not break the law.
Thank you, Representative Considine. Representative Albright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to the testifier. So I understand under ERISA that qualified retirement plans, whether they be a defined benefit, defined contribution, an IRA, ESOP, those type of things, those are protected from sometimes the scoring for these types of benefits. Is there, my first question goes to, I have to remind myself, is there any difference based upon, say, when the required minimum distribution age hits? Are those required distributions then considered as part of the scoring for income eligibility, or are they still excluded?
Mr. Chair, and it's Representative
Albright.
Albright. I'm not an accountant, my wife is, but my understanding is that the answer to your question is no. The minimum required distribution, I don't believe, would have any effect on it. It's simply, are they coming from a Roth IRA, which the tax is already paid, so that doesn't count as income. A traditional IRA, I'm withdrawing from that now, by the way, and that is income, which does disqualify me from SNAP benefits. But also, you could have a savings account in a bank, you know, and that, those taxes are paid, and that doesn't count.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Albright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe going to the line of questioning in terms of your initial eligibility, but there's nothing that would preclude you from taking benefit because the law stipulates that you don't need to include assets other than what is in the law for consideration. That's correct, is it not?
Yes, sir.
And so it's not illegal to do what you did, other than to suggest that there is a point in the program where it becomes a bit want for correction because of what you stated in your initial comments. You don't need it, and so you're pointing out the flaw in where that threshold is for people. I don't know that I heard you suggest that we're trying to intimate anyone from not having availability to benefits, but there is a gradient in terms of where people probably need it more than others, particularly if they have hard assets or assets in retirement plans that should be considered as being available for income on a yearly basis. Would that be a correct statement?
Mr. Understander.
Yes, sir, I do agree with that.
Thank you.
Representative Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things I wrestle with is I'm hearing this here, is there's concern in terms of the assets, et cetera. And the thing that I wrestle with is that over the years in the jobs that I've had, is it's not unusual that with the guidelines that we have right here, people who are supposed to get SNAP or should be eligible for them don't get them in the current situation. Because even though it says proof of income, many times when they go for proof of income, there's several things that come in, is that they've applied at a temporary agency. If the temporary agency or the businesses that they applied to don't fill out the forms to get the forms back to the county, they end up getting denied their services and support until somebody can chase down to the business to get proof that the person is no longer working there or is working below a certain threshold. There's also the issues of victims of identity theft. It's not unusual some of the populations that we've worked with, because that they're lower income, they're people of color. It's not unusual that they get preyed on in identity theft, and it gets because they're because of the populations that they're in, the likelihood of getting it reported, of it being reported, is much lower, and those things being fleshed out. And so things start showing up as income that they might have or assets that they have that they really don't. And these are some of the concerns that I have as you're coming forward with the program, and it bothers me a little bit because, you know, the people that I see and work with on a regular basis are by and large very poor people of color who should be able to get access and are having the biggest trouble getting access. And then we have a situation where somebody doing very well off seems to be able to get the money without much of a problem. And that's where I'm struggling with right now, is because some who really need it aren't able to get it because of denials in the process. So I'm bothered by the way it's being approached.
Representative Halverson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I know Representative Pinto asked about a fiscal note. Representative, how have you requested a local impact statement to find out what impact your bill would have on counties and local governments?
Representative Howe.
Mr. Chair, Representative Helverson, no, I have not, but I would hope that the Association of Minnesota Counties will provide me that information.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Halverson.
And to the testifier, did you, on the months that you drew this benefit, spend more than $278 on food for you and your family?
Mr. Understander.
Yes, ma'am, we did.
Okay. I think it's important to know that people in the SNAP program very often have very little disposable income to spend beyond their $278 a month. Have you always been able to provide food for your family?
Mr. Understander.
Yes, we have.
Mr. Chair, I think that it's really important for you to also know what it feels like for families who can't provide food for their children. These are families who are working. I think that what you have brought us is a piece of a narrative. You have drawn a conclusion that somehow SNAP benefits are being abused. Do you have any evidence that SNAP benefits are being abused in your community?
Representative Halverson, I think the testimony goes to the fact that he qualifies for something that he shouldn't qualify for by his own admission. I don't think he's he's here to testify on that. Representative Halverson, you know, what do you hope to accomplish by that line of questioning?
Mr. Chair, I think it's important. The testifier has brought us a very clear proposal, very clear solutions for a problem that he has yet to define actually exists. We don't know that there is an epidemic of people taking benefits for food that do not qualify for it. We know that this testifier took $6,000 worth of benefits that he did not qualify for.
Representative Halverson, I believe that he did qualify for it, and that's the problem.
He did
That's
not
why
need
we're
it.
here.
I'm sorry, we need to, when I say qualify, I mean people who are in need. You know if you're hungry and you can't feed your children. You know if you are not going to make it till the end of the month. And so if you've taken the $6,000 of benefit and you were not in need and you were able to supplement not only the money that you got from the federal government, but with additional money, and then you admitted that you didn't need it, you did so in order to draw a conclusion about every other person in the SNAP program. And that is where I find a real concern.
Representative Halverson, I think it's just as likely that you could say that there are people who do not qualify but are hungry and do need food, and that those who are truly in need are being displaced by others who are receiving benefits who do not. It is perplexing to many that there is such strident opposition to anything that looks as though it makes it, we are looking harder at qualifications for benefits or determination of eligibility for benefits. And there is I think a very the strident opposition and personal attacks on people that bring that up are very perplexing to many.
Mr. Chair, I am perplexed at the fact that we are discussing a solution to a problem that we have yet to establish actually exists. If there were data, if there were information about people who were taking this benefit and who were not in need. Now, I have heard anecdotal stories all of my life about people who think that their neighbor maybe isn't in need or somebody isn't in need. We don't know. We can't know by looking at somebody what their need is. We can't know by somebody's employment status what their need is, because we know that a lot of people who are in need of assistance temporarily at different times in their lives are most often employed. And so the fact that I'm perplexed by the fact that we are not talking about this issue of hunger in Minnesota, which we know exists, which we know has been growing, not because we've been spending more on the program, but because more people in all of our communities are hungry. The percentage of children in my community that are hungry, and I live in an affluent community, have been rising. And so to come to the legislature and to make assumptions about people who are using SNAP benefits in the state of Minnesota, and to make assumptions that they are somehow that they are taking benefits that they do not need is a real stretch from this particular testifier's experience. I think that you can create all kinds of scenarios, but this is nothing more than one more attempt to say that people who are accessing public programs in Minnesota are not working hard and are not qualified and are not in need. We're not addressing what the actual issue is, and that's why I'm finding this incredibly offensive, that $6,000 of benefits were taken on a program that, and I hope somebody addresses this, currently can't meet the need. Our food shelves, my food shelf in my district that serves thousands of people, can't meet the need. SNAP can't meet the need. My church that delivers meals to children in my community can't meet the need. And so I am perplexed and offended by a narrative that says that somehow this person's experience can be extrapolated to every single person in the SNAP program.
Mr. Chair.
Representative Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Halverson, in no way does this bill or this attempt try to signify that people on SNAP aren't in need. All this is an attempt to do is put the guidelines out there and help me, if you're concerned about that, help me correct and put the right guidelines in here to make sure those that don't need it don't get it. And those that are in need do get it. I don't want to take anything away from those that need it. This in no way is an attempt to do that. What this is an attempt to do is to put some guidelines out there and some curb, some structure to it, that those with considerable assets aren't receiving what they shouldn't get. And right now, there are no guidelines. It's wide open. And that's all this is trying to do, is structure it so people like Mr. Undersander with considerable assets cannot get to this program. And that's all we're trying to do. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members.
Representative Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I I think it was inappropriate to apply for these benefits to make this point, when you can make this point without doing that. You can make an argument and bring a bill forward without committing something that you didn't need, knowing you didn't need it, taking $6,000 away from others who do need it. And who are those people, Representative Howe? Those people that are taking it that don't need it. That's the data that Representative Halverson is asking for. Which individuals are getting it that don't need it and have other assets and wealth? We don't know that that's even occurring. So I think there's been over 60,000 people already that have been kicked off SNAP because of other eligibility that need it, and that's why we see an increase of families that are going hungry and children. So I think your witness should have never applied for that benefit. We expect people to do the right thing and to behave accordingly without having to create new state laws and mandates, to act accordingly, and if they didn't need it, don't apply for the benefit.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Undersander.
Yeah, Representative Schultz, I'd like to respond to that. I understand what you're saying. Lost my train of thought. When I learned about this, I'm a volunteer health insurance program advisor for Senior Linkage and had formal training and I learned about a number of these programs. And I was appalled, and I'm learning about the asset requirements for medical assistance, for federal Medicare savings programs, and we get to this program and there's no asset test. Now, I could have, to answer your concern, I have done research on SNAP asset eligibility laws, and I could have talked to my friends and said, hey, I've been doing some research, and here's what I found out about SNAP asset, and their eyes would have started glazing over. That's just human nature. But if I say I'm a high net worth individual receiving food stamps, I have their attention. And it's obviously gotten your attention. I really don't think I would be here if I hadn't audited the program, so to speak. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Representative Franzen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and Representative Howe, Mr. Undersander, I'm really sorry about the line of questioning that has been being put forth and the accusations. And Representative Howe, I applaud you for taking the concerns of your constituents seriously, for representing him. He came to you with what he sees as an issue, and you took the time to listen to him and take his concerns seriously. And that's what we're about here, right? So you have Representative Howe as your state representative, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you went to him and asked for a meeting. You said, Representative, this is an issue. I would like you to represent me because that's what you're elected to do. Could you bring forward a bill? Am I on the right line of thinking here? And I'm assuming that Representative Howe, being the awesome legislator that he is, had a bill drafted. He sent that bill over to you. You took a gander at it and said, yeah, this is exactly what I'm looking for, or maybe here's a tweak there, a tweak here, but at the end of the day, he drafted that bill for you. And Mr. Undersander, you're actually very lucky because we have a lot of bills that we draft up for our constituents that don't get heard, okay? I have a few right now that aren't going to get heard this year. Hopefully next year that those issues will be able to come to light. But sometimes our bills are not heard at all. So this is pretty lucky that you're actually here in front of this committee, so that's great. And also, had Mr. Undersander not applied and said for the benefits, right, and had said, I think this is what's happening, but he had no proof. He'd come before, the line of questioning would say, well, how do you know? You're just making things up. You didn't even apply. You're just assuming. So you went forth, you brought forth and got the data, and you said, here, Mr. Howe, Representative Howe, here's what I did, here's what I found, and this is a problem. And I am sure, Mr. Undersander, you want to protect the integrity of the programs, and you want to make sure those programs are there for people that actually do need the help. And you're saying, people like me, we don't need the help. Okay, you were being honest, coming forward and laying everything out on the line, and now being accused of possibly, you should be in jail and you're a criminal, and how dare you take these programs that are meant for people who need them. Well, if the programs are there and there is no asset limit and no guidelines, people are going to take that. That's just, some people just have that in them. That's their human behavior. We would like to think not, but at the end of the day, if there is some cookies laying out and it says free, maybe you don't need a cookie in your life, right? But it's a free cookie, so I'm going to take that cookie. That's the same thing with public programs. If they qualify for those programs, why not take them in some people's line of thinking? So I'm sorry, Mr. Understander, that you are being treated this way. You should be able to come to this committee, any committee, without being accused of being a criminal or being a thief. And Representative Howell, thank you for representing your constituent.
Representative Liebling.
Mr. Chair and Representative Howe, and to the testifier, first of all, this obviously is a very emotion-fraught conversation for a lot of people. I think, Representative Howe, part of the problem is that you did actually start out in your presentation by saying, I believe it was you and not the testifier who said something about, this is about how the program is being abused. Now, I understand what you really hear about, what the testifiers really hear about, is whether we need to tighten up, whether we need to have an asset test. It's not about whether the program is being abused. So I have to say that there's a difference there. And I think we can talk logically and rationally about whether we need to tighten up some eligibility requirement. That's a very different conversation than whether the program is being abused, which you have brought to us one example of. Okay, so I just want to set that as a groundwork. One of the problems today for us in hearing this bill is that we don't have a fiscal note. And I think people have to step back for a second and think, why do we have asset tests, and why do some programs have no asset tests? Why have the asset tests been removed? I believe the reason is because sometimes the bureaucracy around figuring out who deserves or who doesn't can be more costly than the cost of making a mistake and including some people who may not need the program. So without having any kind of fiscal note, it's really pretty hard to evaluate whether it would be a good idea to have some kind of asset test in Minnesota for these benefits, right? We can't evaluate that. A lot of times in this committee, we hear about all the bureaucracy it takes for government to do some, if we're going to sit and sort through look at everybody closely and go out and say, how much is that car worth? And how much do you really have in that bank account? Even if it's on a sample basis, you have to hire people, you have to have systems to do that, and those things cost money. So we need to evaluate that if we're going to take this seriously at all. So part of the concern I have, I understand the bill is going to be sent to the Reform Committee, which is, I thought was more or less done for the year, but okay, I don't know. To hear this bill in this Finance Committee without any kind of fiscal note, it's hard for me to understand the point of that, because you really can't make a real rational decision on it without that information in front of you. So there's that. The thing, though, I want to respond to one more thing. Well, a couple more statements I want to make. One is I understand why members are a little upset about the fact that, I'm not upset about the fact that you applied for the benefit to see if you could get on it, even with your assets. Okay, I get that. But you stayed on it for 6 months. I don't know why it took 6 months to prove the point, and then that you took the money, and then you made the statement to us that you could make a better decision about who needs it than the federal government can. Well, I don't know how you check you know, I mean, people say that, and, I mean, it's easy to say. It's really easy to say that, is all I want to say about that. But finally, I just want to address what was just said by another member about if people qualify, why not just take it? That people, there's this idea out there that people just want free stuff. And what you have to understand is that a lot of people who are in poverty feel a lot of shame about that. We're talking the people that are generally on these programs, and I didn't come here today with data on this, but I bet you a lot of people in the room could bear this out, that people are more likely not to apply for a benefit that they actually could get and actually do need because they feel shame about that. People who are poor don't want to be poor. People feel shame about often they're working really hard and they can't make enough money to really support their families. So we have to look at this holistically, and that's, I think, why a lot of us get very emotional about it, because when we think about these programs, we're thinking about the people. You know what, I just got a message from somebody in my community who told me she's a grandmother, she's raising 2 grandchildren. She was writing to me about having gotten her tax return garnished. But she was telling me a little bit about, you know, her situation and how she lives, and she has a college degree, and she was working 2 jobs, and she and the grandchildren are still in deep, deep poverty. That's the sort of thing, like about half of Minnesotans are actually really struggling hard just to get by, just basic living. And then we spend committee time with this bill, which, and I'm not accusing you, I don't share the feeling of some of my colleagues here. I'm not, you know, yelling at you for doing this at all. You know, it's a legitimate concern. But here we are using committee time, very valuable, scarce committee time, where we have real big, serious issues in the state about those kind of people who are barely getting by. And we're hearing this bill without even the basic tools to know whether the concern you're bringing us is even is really valid to even solve. Because we don't even have the fiscal note. So that's not your fault. But, you know, maybe, I don't know, Mr. Chair, are we gonna, if this bill is gonna go anywhere, are we gonna actually get a fiscal note so that we can evaluate whether this is something we ought to change?
Well, Representative Liebling, I think that will be in process. The bill will move forward. We'll see where it goes from there. However, I think it is one of the very few bills that have been brought forward by members, frankly, of either side that actually looks at overspending in ways that we can be more efficient and we can redirect the benefits to the people who are truly in need. And we need to look at eligibility requirements. As you know, we used to have asset requirements for Minnesota Care. We had asset requirements for lots of programs that we currently now don't do. We had testimony yesterday from the department that it's just too expensive and too hard to collect tens of millions of dollars that the DHS should have that could frankly be spent helping people. Those are very strong concerns that I think are very relevant to this committee, and so I thank Representative Howe for bringing that forward.
So, Mr. Chair, you know, on that note, I mean, the very question is whether this saves any money. That is the question.
I think there's a question of whether it wastes money as well.
Well, and we can't know. We cannot know because, you know, for every one person who might be doing what this gentleman did, who's taking it because they can and they don't really need to, even though he's doing it to prove a point, I get that. You know, for every person who might be doing that, there might be lots and lots who are not even accessing the program because they may not know if they would qualify and they don't want to try. But, you know, Mr. Chair, if we're talking about saving money and checking to make sure that people need stuff, I got to go back to the $800 million that this legislature has spent on subsidizing insurance companies, and we're giving them the money without any check for whether they need it, and apparently they've done very well in this last year and don't need it. So, you know, I know you want to put together a bill that has some savings in it, but unless there's a fiscal note on this, I frankly, I don't know why we couldn't have had a fiscal note by this point in the session. We've had quite a while, and this bill is number 118, which means it's been out there a good long time. Thank you.
Fair point, Representative Liebling. Representative Considine, quickly, and then we're going to finish up with Representative Albright, and then we're going to move on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Howe, I just wanted to say I do trust you, and I do believe that you are trying to make things better. And if there is something that we or I can help you do to make this better, I think there are some things. I think probably the asset limits are a little low. But yeah, I do believe that your heart is in the right place. And I think we can, I'd be happy to try to help you with it.
Absolutely, thank you. Representative Albright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Howe, as I look at your bill, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what you're really trying to do is, you're not changing, per se, the threshold for where the state would step in and provide benefits. What you're actually doing is reintroducing United States Code Title VII, Section 2014, that really puts an asset test to it for purposes of verifying to your testifiers, example of folks that may have means that's excluded otherwise. They still get, from what I read, the benefit at a higher or an elevated level than what would be under the federal parameters. And so to suggest that we're limiting or taking away a benefit from those that are in dire need or are just scraping by, I don't think that that could be anything but further than from the truth. But to the extent that, we speak in hyperbole in committee, I would say that if you wanted to continue to give a benefit to the rich, then don't do this bill. But if you want to, in a sense, hold people accountable for what they've done in life and work hard, save, and then provide for yourself when you retire, then to the example of $800 million to insurance companies, then you should vote for this because it takes something away from the rich that right now might be available. End of story.
Thank you.
Representative Loeffler.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think it's important, since we're a Finance Committee, to remember that this is a total 100% federally paid program. So if there's any savings, it's not going to be to the budget that we're going to be wrestling with over the next couple of weeks. If anything, there would be additional costs because the counties do eligibility, and the additional time that they would have to make in getting and reviewing records is, I don't believe, fully covered by the federal government. So I think that if we're going to ask for a fiscal note, we should ask for a local impact note as well, because that's what the real cost will be within the state of Minnesota. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Webster. We have very, very limited time, so if we could please keep testimony very brief, we'd appreciate it. That we'll go through all the testifiers that we can get to, and then we will recess and be back this evening. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, my name is Jessica Webster. I'm a staff attorney with Legal Aid, and I had a good conversation with Representative Howe last session about this millionaire constituent who was accessing food support. And I did express at that time that I do think there are better and more targeted ways to address this issue and this millionaire who has accessed food. What I think you will, Representative Dean, Chair Dean, what you mentioned is the strident opposition you'll hear today. And I think what that strident opposition is what this bill does, is go from no asset limit to a $2,000 or a $3,000 asset limit. And I hope that we can all recognize what the difference is between a constituent with $1 million asset limit and a senior with $15,000 that needs to make that $15,000 last for the next 20 years for home repairs. And we heard Representative Albright's bill about senior companionship and transportation and long-term care. I think an asset, may look different when you really think about what it needs to be used for. just to give you a little bit more context on food support and asset limits, food support is a federal program, and Minnesota is one of 35 states that no longer has an asset limit, and that has happened in the last decade because the federal government encouraged states not to have asset limits because they discouraged low-income people from saving money, and they discouraged seniors from accessing food, and they introduced tremendous complexity to the application and renewal process, a process that is, when you introduce an asset test, it introduces errors and it introduces extraordinary county burden. I won't talk much about that because I think the counties are here to tell you what that looks like. So I want others to be able to testify. I'll just say I think there's a more targeted way to do this. I don't think a $2,000 or $3,000 asset limit is probably what Mr. Undersander would suggest when he has $1 million. It's the way the bill is written is very punitive, and I just hope that we can take a closer look at that. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Mr. Chair? I will say, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I will say that when we had that conversation, I invited her to come back with a number to help me work on getting an asset level that would be somewhere in a level, and this is the first time I've seen her since, so.
All right. Next up, we have Peter Wytalk, community organizer with Hunger Solutions. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. My name is Peter Wytalk, organizer with Hunger Solutions Minnesota. Appreciate the opportunity to testify on this bill. So Minnesota at one point lagged behind other states, and I know this was mentioned before. We're now one of 35 states that eliminated that SNAP asset limit. And so around the same time, Minnesota also moved to a one-page senior application. So we're in favor of simplification. Adding an asset limit is really taking a step backward. Makes it more difficult for people to apply and for counties to administer, as was mentioned earlier. So seniors and working poor are mostly going to be affected by this legislation. We don't want to limit their ability to access the program when a temporary setback like an illness or job loss means they have to go deplete their savings in order to put food on the table. And so having access, a little bit of savings helps buffer households against unexpected expenses like a home repair or health care bill. And they're really an administrative burden for many counties. So for these reasons, we urge you to not support this bill because we're not in favor of taking food off the table for many seniors and working poor in our state. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wytalk. Next up, we have Claire Gravin from Food Security Program Coordinator, Jewish Family and Children's Services. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and proceed.
Chairman Dean, committee members, my name is Claire Graven, and I'm the Food Security Coordinator for Jewish Family and Children's Service. Our agency served 13,000 individuals and households last year, including aging services, career services, mental health services, family and children home visit programs. And I'm also here to speak for our partner agency, PRISM, which is a food shelf in Golden Valley that serves the north and western suburbs of the Twin Cities. Both of our agencies conduct significant SNAP outreach, eligibility screening, and support. Our experience has been with having in-depth conversations about financial eligibility for SNAP, and our finding is that the asset test will not only result in thousands of vulnerable Minnesotans losing access to food benefits, but also that it will cost the state and local government more in the long term. I also want to put my comments in a context, which is in anticipation of this conversation today, I tried to do some research on the average amount of assets that older adults have. And what I found was one data point from the National Institute for Retirement Security, which said that and this is for all adults nationwide, age 55 to 64, the median amount of assets per household is $14,000. And so to Representative Liebling's point, I do believe that there is an important fiscal note to be made here, which is what is the average amount of assets people are bringing with them to retirement. And we're hearing from economists at the Humphrey Institute and elsewhere that there is a looming crisis as these adults are approaching retirement without sufficient assets. And so the people that we see at Jewish Family and Children's Service of Minneapolis and at PRISM are the older adults who are facing financial difficulties. And I want to comment on two situations that I see in particular in the work that I do doing SNAP outreach to older people. One is that SNAP, along with mobile food shelves and Meals on Wheels, help seniors stay in their homes longer. And many seniors are slowly drawing down their assets in an attempt to remain independent as long as possible. So this action of forcing asset limits is going to move people into poverty status faster and force them to become dependent sooner on a broader range of government programs. The other situation that I see, to Representative Liebling's point, are the multi-generational households that I see coming into PRISM Food Shelf, where you have grandparents, adult children, and grandchildren all in one household applying for SNAP benefits. And you see, for example, older adults who aren't yet retirement age who are negatively impacted by the recession and have never been able to get back on their feet again. And so they're working multiple low-wage jobs. They may have an adult child in the household who is also struggling financially, along with supporting grandchildren. And collectively, they are still below 165% of federal poverty. They may have some assets that they're using to sustain the household, but what they're doing is drawing down those assets to keep themselves going, so that the assets that the grandparents may have thought they were going to have available for their retirement are being spent to keep the family going right now. And I see those people all the time in the PRISM Food Shelf, where I do intake on a weekly basis. So very, very quickly, what I want to say to you.
Ma'am, we are over time actually
Okay,
already.
all right.
So
what I
we
want
do
to
have
say
three more
is,
testifiers, and we are over time, and there's another committee coming in at 3 o'clock. So I would like to move
This is a
on.
humanitarian issue and a financial issue.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have Tracy Fishman from Prepare and Prosper. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this afternoon. I will skip over much of my testimony. You also should have a copy with you. I am the Executive Director of Prepare and Prosper, and as I said, I appreciate the opportunity to testify against House File 118, a dangerous bill to reinstate asset limits on SNAP for Minnesotans. Real quickly, and by way of background, Prepare and Prosper is an organization that facilitates financial stability and well-being through the provision of free tax assistance and access to financial services and products, coaching, and systems change work. We are very focused on the problems of financial instability. 1 in 3 families in the United States reports having no savings, according to Pew Research. About half of American families are financially insecure, and a growing number of households experience income volatility with spikes and dips as much as 25% in any given month and even any given week. What's more, far too many families are one financial shock away from crisis. A car breakdown, a medical emergency, or a job loss can be a major setback for a family. So those asset limits that would be in place could severely damage a household if people had to spend down what limited assets they might have. So this affects not only families, but our communities and our economy. So given these economic dynamics and a great deal of research in this area, we have great concerns about this harmful bill that would discourage savings and runs counter to good policy that should foster and not prevent sufficiency and stability. The bill would penalize savings, as you've heard, and ownership, and create more hardship for vulnerable populations. Minnesota has wisely been one of 35 states, as you heard, that eliminated SNAP asset limits in the past decade, and for good reason. Reduced asset limits have been shown to stabilize households' financial security while also decreasing administrative costs when fewer people cycle on and off the program. We see firsthand how challenging it can be to navigate asset limits. Many of the people we work with face trade-offs in their lives on a daily basis, prioritizing the timing on payment of bills and housing, putting food on the table, supporting opportunities for their children's future development, and more. We have heard many, many stories of people who have shared both their financial goals and aspirations, but then they've had to make hard choices about not saving based on concerns they will lose essential benefits. This is perverse. These choices are too often driven by policies that have harmful consequences for families in our communities. So, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, thank you again for this opportunity, and I urge you to vote no on House File 118.
Thank you, members. We do have to clear the room, so we will be in recess. We will come back this evening at approximately 7:30 after caucus.